he knows about. That's knowledge. Wisdom would be taking that knowledge and knowing how to apply to it, getting an analogy out of life. In Proverbs, we serve it's a proverb that says that he wrote is or spoke, and somebody wrote, observe the ant and be wise. And he names these things that animals do. In other words, he actually describes what ants do. They're diligent in their labor, so he's admonishing us to observe the ant and be wise and be diligent in our labors. Okay, that's an example. Is taking an analogy of the information that he has and putting it in practical use. All right, he's doing a beautiful job. Next thing I want to tell you about, 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 15. This relates to your pictures that I give you. And for this reason, the labor force which King Solomon raised, he built the house of the Lord, his own house. The Millo, that's a landfill between old school Jerusalem and where the Temple Mount is. It was a hill because you had Mount Zion to the south part, Mount Moriah to the north part, and a ditch in between. The Millo is a landfill that he filled that up, so it was just a nice even slope going up to the Temple Mount. So he built the wall of Jerusalem, and then Hatzor would be the name of, we see it Hazor, but Hatzor and Megiddo and Gezer are three towns that he built. Now look what this statement says. Pharaoh king of Egypt had gone up and taken Gezer and burned it with fire and killed the Canaanites who dwelt in the city and had given it as a dowry to his daughter, Solomon's wife. In our last exciting episode, tell us about the last exciting episode and why was it significant? Did anybody remember why I thought it was significant that they mentioned this in the Bible, where Gezer had never been taken by the Israelites who were supposed to take the land? There's a scripture in there that actually mentioned they did not take Gezer, right? So they were supposed to take this land, and this is Gezer. If you look at we don't have the map here, but Mediterranean Sea, the coastline, the land of the Philistines had all these little towns, Gaza down here, Ashkelon, and then things along the coastline. Gezer was actually a bit inland. It was about 10, 15 miles inland. So they had not gone that far to take it. So why did this come up as being significant, this Pharaoh taking Gezer and burning it? Does anybody remember from last week? Nobody remembers? Okay, I'll do a review. What I mentioned was the Pharaoh that, if you go back into the age of when Moses left Egypt, because we talked about last week that Solomon had said, I'm dedicating this temple, it's been 480 years since they left Egypt, right? So we found out, I tracked back and found out which Pharaoh that was, and it was, what's his name? Somebody the third. Thutmose the third. Thank you. At his time frame, he was a mighty Pharaoh who had conquered this Levant. He had gone out and done all these campaigns, very powerful, warlike Pharaoh who had really conquered all this area. And I read an archaeological report in Archaeology Review, and they said they don't really know when or how or what happened. But Egypt was totally in charge of this area, and suddenly, whoosh, they're not in charge anymore. They're gone. They're just gone. Okay, there was a few outposts that they maintained or had influence on, they think, because at this place Gezer, they had indications that the people there, when it was destroyed, still had like Egyptian gods and things like that. But for the most part, right at coincidentally, about the time that Moses left Egypt, all the armies over that area evaporated. I brought up in conjecture, well, maybe he said, armies, what are you doing lollygagging in the Levant? Come on down, I got these Israelites to wipe out. They're between me and the sea. Come on down. And then Moses was there, and before they parted the Red Sea, he says, stand back and watch the salvation of the Lord, for this army that you see of Egypt, you will see no more forever. Whoa, because at that time, guess who was in the land of Canaan? Egypt. Those dudes controlled Egypt, and suddenly, they're not there anymore. I think they're in the bottom of the Red Sea. So that's a review there. Now here's Gezer. So what's significant about this, archaeologists today have just told us about this incident. They found the destruction of Gezer, and they knew that it was a Philistine culture who had been influenced by Egypt. And at this time, and when So what I said was, why are archaeologists trying to figure it out? The Bible's already explained